Welcome to Walking Word Podcast. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of gentlemen in the Old Testament. We're going to talk about Caleb. He was one of the Israelites that was in bondage in Egypt. He left with all of the other Israelites. And when they got to the promised land at the border, Moses sent 12 spies in, and 2 spies came back, Caleb and Joshua. Both of them saw the land and they said, we can do this. We can take this land. Not because the army was so great or because it was a bunch of pushovers. It was because God said that they could. It was because God promised it. So they believed the word of the Lord and they said, let's do this. The other 10 spies, however, they saw the giants, the fortified cities. They said, we look like grasshoppers in their sight. There's no way we can do this. And they turned the heart of the people to fear. And so for 40 years, that generation that was scared, that didn't believe, died off. And Caleb and Joshua, though believing, were still out there for those 40 years. So they didn't sin, they believed, but yet they still suffered the consequence of somebody else's sin. And we can all think to times when that's occurred to us, like, I didn't do anything. Why am I having to deal with this person's sin? And then you have David, many years forward, and David did sin. He had an affair with Bathsheba. He got her husband killed. The baby that they had died. And David got the consequence of the sin. And he was so repentant. He was truly sorrowful. Nathan came and exposed the whole thing. And David said, please pray God forgive me. And Nathan said something that is startling. He said, you have been forgiven. That's why you're still alive. See, he hasn't killed you because he's forgiven you. When we think about that, you can go through life and you can suffer the consequence of other people's sin despite you not sinning, or you can go through life and you can still suffer the consequences of sin even after you've been forgiven. What do we do with that? Because that's a pretty harsh reality. Well, there's 2 principles we should always remember. One is life doesn't stop because we're hurt or traumatized. And that's a harsh reality to come to grips with. But life doesn't stop. The second thing is that consequences can still occur after forgiveness, because God can forgive us, but that doesn't mean the people we've wronged have forgiven us. That doesn't mean that we still may not suffer earthly civil consequences or relational consequences. So how do we combat this? How do we deal with the walk that could still hurt and harm us despite being forgiven or not even sinning? And there's 3 strategies I want to try to throw out there. I would suggest that the first one is to know the character of God. And by know, I mean the word epigenosko or gnosko. And that word is to experience, not to just observe a thing, but to understand something by experiencing it. You see, we have to experience the character of God, his mercy, his grace, his kindness. And that will soften so much of what we deal with day to day. God's character is mercy. All throughout Israel's history, he constantly gave them chance after chance and pleaded with them to return to him. And the ultimate mercy that we've received is Jesus Christ, because we've sinned. And yet God, the Father, poured his wrath out for that sin, that judgment on Jesus, not us. We've received the ultimate mercy. That's his heart for us. The second would be that we have to be willing to be wrong. We have to be okay with not doing it right. And that means we have to let go of our pride, our ego. We have to understand that we are flawed individuals, that, we're still working through our life. We're still working through and maturing in our salvation. And that there are going to be times that we will mess up. And if somebody comes to us and corrects us and is able to give us direction, we have to be willing to be wrong, because we have to be able to receive that direction and that instruction. Now, the last one is probably the hardest for most people. We have to be willing to forgive. We have to. And one of the easiest ways to remember that we have to be able to forgive is that we were forgiven first. That we sinned. And in our sin, Jesus, it says, while we were yet still enemies, still sinners, he died for us. So whatever wrong has been done to us, we're not saying it's okay, but what we are saying is that we've been forgiven, and we have to in turn forgive others, because just like we screwed up, other people are going to screw up too. Just like we messed up, other people are going to mess up too. And we have to be willing to forgive them for that. Forgiveness in the Hebrew is nasa, and it means to lift or to carry. And one might think that's kind of an odd way to describe forgiveness, but Jesus perfectly illustrated that, because he lifted the sin off of us, the burden of guilt off of us, so that we could then walk fully in our strength under grace and mercy. So when we forgive others, we give them the chance to experience grace to its fullest. That's why it's so important that we forgive others, because if we can't forgive them, then we can't minister to them. We can't be the body to them. We're going to be enemies to them, to the cross even, because forgiveness was for them as well. And it's a hard thing to do, but it's something that we have to do. So just remember, sometimes life is hard, and sometimes you get dealt a bad hand. Sometimes you didn't do it, but you still have to deal with everybody else's mess. And sometimes you did do it, and God forgives you, but others are going to hold it over your head. And we just have to understand that life goes on, consequences happen sometimes, and that the closer we get to God, the more we're willing to submit and be wrong, the more that we're willing to forgive others for their wrong, the better it's all going to be, and the more cohesive a body we can be in Christ. So I hope that helps. I hope that's encouraging, and I hope that those strategies are something that you can use moving forward in your day-to-day walk. Thanks for listening. Thanks for giving attention to this, and I hope that it's encouraging. And there's going to be an extended version of this where we go into a lot more detail, a lot more scriptures to support all of these different points and strategies. It's going to be on the audio-only podcast that we're going to have, and I hope you go to that, hope you listen to that, hope it encourages you. And again, that's just going to be a much, much deeper dive, much longer form of this, looking into a lot of scriptures on it. So again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Hope you go listen to the other ones, and have a good day.